Hi, this is Nancy Rolfsma with On Point TV, and we're going to do just a quick little live here. I say quick, like as if my videos are ever quick. So 20-minute, we're going to shoot for a 20-minute video on some free motion quilting. We've done a lot of mask videos. I hope that everybody is being safe, but I personally am maybe a little masked out. Nobody is asking me for them. I've got 20 in a bag so I can give them away if somebody needs them. But I'm ready to do some quilting, so I'm hoping that you are also. What I want to take you through today is the quilting of a simple kids quilt. So this is a quilt that I showed you a little bit back. I made a label for it. Next week, we'll put on the binding and the label, and I'll show you how that'll all work. But this is for my new nephew, Nolan. And Nolan, I hope you're not watching. Well, okay, I don't think Nolan's watching, but I hope his mom is not watching. So this will be his quilt. So the idea here is that it's a simple quilt made for a young man who's about 6 or 7 years old. But the thing about making a quilt for a 6 or 7 year old is you need to know that that quilt is going to be abused. I would not make a quilt for a child that I thought should stay in pristine condition. I expect this quilt to be used a lot, which means it's going to be washed a lot. And when a quilt is going to be washed a lot, you need to be sure that you do enough quilting to keep everything together. So the quilting that I'm going to do is going to be with that kind of frame of mind. I'm not doing art quilting. I'm doing some simple things, but I want it to really be well quilted so that when Nolan uses it and loves it, it can be washed a gazillion times and last maybe till he's in high school. That would be awesome. All right, so taking you through some of the tools that I use. As always, I'm going to be using the Superior So Fine polyester thread in the top. Piecing is done with 100% cotton, but you can use polyester for the quilting, and this just works really, really well. In the bobbin, also a polyester. On this machine, I can use the SuperBobs, which is the Bottom Line thread, also by Superior. It's a 60 weight thread. Works really great in the bobbin because it makes the bobbin actually last longer because the thread is so fine. So for this quilt, I think I have this dark gray in the bobbin. So let me show you what my backing is. So this is my backing, small kind of busy print. So I've got some white going on the top and some blue and red. So that gray works really well, covering everything up, plus that it's a small busy print, so that covers things up. I'm going to use the Schmetz Topstitch needle in a size 90. Little bit of word of warning. I have my machine just got a tune-up, but I don't think it's quite right. So some threads have been breaking. So hopefully that won't happen. But typically using the top stitch in a size 90 means that I'm not going to have thread breakage, and I love that. I also will be marking the quilt at one point, and we'll be using the Bohin. This is the chalk pencil that I love so much for marking on quilts. So those are the tools that I'm going to use. I'll talk about this little case a little bit later. Let me put this stuff away. And before, whoops, okay, sorry. There, okay, away as in on some shelf somewhere, okay? So before you actually do your quilting, I recommend that you draw your design. I have from the beginning of time found that if you draw the design ahead of time, that it really just does help with the continuing process, with your timing, keeping everything smooth and consistent. So I kind of brought my pad here and we're going to do some drawing, and the first stitching we're going to do will be on the half square triangles, which I'm trying to decide where my unstitched half square triangles are, and I'll find those. But before I do that, let's see what the drawing looks like. So for this design, one of the triangles is white and one of them is red. So I'm going to stitch in the white with the white thread and on the red with the red thread. So I'm going to show you what my design would look like if I was doing this row of triangles for the white. All right, so I'm hoping that my hand won't be too much in the way. So the idea is you're going to start at a point and you're going to come down to the next point. And this space should be a little bit less than 1/4 of an inch. All right, so then once I've done that, then I'm going to come up to the top part of the triangle, and then, wait a minute, did I just do that backwards? Yes, I did. Okay, don't do that one yet. Sorry, come down. Then we'll go to the next one because this is white, red, white, red, white, red. So I want to stay just on the white. So come down, then come down again, then come down again. And so you're just kind of bopping down on all of the whites. Then you'll bop over to the edge and then come back up. And now I'm going to go to the next triangle, bop over and up, bop over and up, and then bop over. So pretend I didn't do that the first time, and then up. And so that is going to be the continuous design for stitching on the white. Now, if this were a quilt that were made for an adult or something that was not going to be heavily washed, you might not want to quilt the red. And I'll show you what that looks like if you don't quilt the red. But for a young man's quilt, I want to quilt the red. So again, when it comes to this, I'd start with my red thread, bopping continuously down the line of triangles. And this is all done with the free motion foot. And then come back up, bopping all the way up to where you started. So that's what that design is going to look like. When I do the next design, we'll draw that also. So let me put this out of the way and take you to the area where we're going to quilt. So right up here is where we're going to quilt. So I told you I would show you what it would look like. So this, you can tell here that I have done the stitching on the white or yellow. I kind of intermixed sort of my colors. And I did no stitching yet on the red. I really like that look. I like that look because the yellow stays down and the red pops up, and that looks really cool. And like I said, if this were a quilt for an adult, I would consider leaving the red unquilted. But for a kid's quilt, I want to put lots of quilting on it. So let me get my lickety grip. You can wear quilting gloves if you want. I use the lickety grip, but word of warning, lickety grip is no longer available. So we're in the process of testing out a couple of other things that'll help keep your hands tacky when you're quilting. So a lot of people have given me some really great ideas. Thank you very much. And we are investigating those. So gonna stitch on the white. I'm gonna start here in this corner. So with this machine, it has a needle threader, so I do not need to bring the needle up to the top. But I'm going to start right here. My needle is in the down position. And as I stitch, I'm just going to go on up to the point of the white. There we go. And then I stop right there. Now I want to cut off my thread. If I could find my scissors, I would probably cut off my thread. But right this second, I can't find my scissors. So we'll cut off that thread later, okay? Trust me. Now I'm going to come down. When I get to that point, I'm going to go to the next one. So the thing that I really like about this design is it's really great for beginners. So that they, what are you saying?
The light.
Oh, the light. Okay, Athena's like giving me sign language and I'm not sure what she's telling me. There we go. Is that better? Okay. So what I like about this design is as a beginner, you need to go from that point to this point. Then you stop. Then you can reposition. Think about where your next that's a big word, next location is, and then go on up to that location, keeping your stitch length consistent by the movement of your hands and the tempo of your sewing machine. Now, what I oftentimes will do is I will just continue and continue and continue. So if I were doing this and not having to show you how, I would just continue on down this line all the way to the end, then come back, and then sometimes I'll just turn the corner. I like to keep my free motion quilting as continuous as possible. So I don't like stopping very often unless I absolutely have to. So when you're proceeding with your free motion quilting, I recommend that you think about a plan of attack. You know, all right, I'm going to do this row, then I'm going to go down this row, catch these last guys on this end, and now I'm going to return all the way. So this is where I'm just doing that bopping all the way down. Okay, so this is going to go all the way back up. Then I'm going to get around to the other top side. So once I get here, well, let me go back here, and then we'll be able to do this square. So remember, you only have to go one square at a time. You don't even have to try to do 2 squares at a time. You can come here and stop, reposition, come on up here and stop. All right. So right here is my end. So I did my tiny stitches and I'm going to cut my thread off. And we're ready to move on to the next section. The next section is going to be these squares. Now these squares, I'm going to stitch with a white thread. So that you'll be able to see what I'm stitching. But honestly, I think it's just fine to be in a white thread. It'll look cool. And the idea with this is I'm going to do loop-de-loos. So this is what my loop-de-loos look like drawn. Let me show you what they look like when I stitch them. Loop-de-loos are just going to be a continuation of capital L's. If you happen to have a capital L in your name, it kind of helps because you know how to make a capital L. But the idea is to come around, make a capital L, or the loop going one way, then in the other direction. Now you do not have to go in the other direction. So what I mean by that is I can do 2 loops down and then 1 loop up. That's okay. This is a really, really great time for you to practice your speed, to be consistent with your stitch speed. So your machine going faster or your hands going faster, and then the machine going slower and your hands going slower. So when you're drawing, be consistent. Don't be doing the real fast turns and then slowing down, and then real fast turns and then slowing down. Be consistent with your speed. Also, the sizes of these can vary, but I would recommend that you make them approximately the size of a quarter. And I say that because if you make them the size of a dime, you're going to be stitching on that one block forever, because it's going to take you forever to get that one block filled, as you can see. Whereas if you make them the size of a quarter, that is the perfect quilting density to make a very soft and supple quilt, but yet you're not spending all day long with the quilting. I also like to start a little bit differently and stop a little differently. I didn't do it up there. But instead of starting, can you see the corner here? Instead of starting in a corner and then coming up and starting out your loops, I have found that I like better if I start kind of a loop's distance away from the corner. Let's say that's my corner. If I start here and then come over and catch the end of that loop as the beginning that it started within the loop, and when I end it, the same thing, just come around and end in the loop. That way you don't have any of those lines going in and out. And so it's just a little bit more cohesive, I guess. Boy, that was a big word for today. All right, so to do this, I first need to take my pins out. So I have my safety pins in here, and this is my case that I keep my safety pins in. It's a school box. A friend of mine, Julie, had given this to me years and years and years ago from when I was teaching some classes, and she thought this was a cool tip that she'd seen in some magazine, and sure enough it is. It just holds all your pins, so now when I want to baste a quilt, they're already open, and then as I'm taking them out of the quilt, I just poke them right into the styrofoam. Love that idea. All right, so ready for our loop-dees. So I'm going to start up here, and like I said, I'm going to start about the distance away from the corner that is one of the loops, and as I start, I'm going to take tiny stitches, teeny tiny stitches there. That's my locking stitch. Then I'm going to make my loop and come around and catch that. So now I have made a complete circle. Now I can continue with my loops. Now I want to show you kind of the idea of the speed. This is a very nice speed. This speed for me is very comfortable. I don't feel rushed by it. But let's say you want to go a little bit slower. Now I'm going to go slower. Do you see that now my hands are moving much slower? You might also notice that the slower I go, the less smooth my curves are. If I go a nice, consistent, a little bit faster, I think this is my speed. And this, on this sewing machine, if we can come up a little bit over here, you'll see that this has a speed control. Oh, it's a little bit dark, but it does have a speed control. Most modern day sewing machines, I'd say in the last 10 years, have a speed control on it. So if you're looking for a new machine, I would highly recommend you'd find one with a speed control. Now you'll also notice on this machine that is a high speed machine. I am now going to make this machine not even go all the way up. I'm just going to go halfway so that the machine will be really fast. And so my hands will be moving really fast. And I get really stressed when it does this. So this is why I don't do it. But I want you to know that if you're comfortable with that speed, then that's okay. You can go fast. So pedal to the metal. Now my hands are moving much faster. The machine is much louder. I get a little bit of anxiety like I'm on the Autobahn or something. So you can go faster with your machine, but then your hands have to move faster. Now I'm going to move it down to a more acceptable Midwest girls type speed. There, I like that. That's better. And I do adjust the speed on my machine so that my foot can go all the way down. My foot is all the way down, but the machine can't go any faster because I have adjusted the speed with my machine instead. If you don't have a speed control on your machine, then you have to try to adjust the speed. It's kind of like, you know, tapping your head and rubbing your belly at the same time, where you're trying to make your hands move consistently, and at the same time, you're trying to adjust the foot pedal. So I'm going to just come up here to the end of this so we can finish this block, and I'm going to pretend this is my end. So just like I started, I'm going to take my loop and just stop right in that loop. I took my tiny stitches, so just went around and then copied over that line and then took my tiny stitches to stop it. So now I'm going to cut my thread off. All right, so that's what, so can you see those loop-de-loos pretty well? Yeah, you can see that pretty good. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you is quilting on the border. Now I want you to know that I really would like to have been able to quilt this with a white thread so that you could really see it, but honestly that just wouldn't look very nice. So
before you start,
yes,
there's a question. Yes. Vicki has asked, does the styrofoam make the pins duller?
I don't know. I have didn't test them before, and I'm not testing them now. I know that I have had that box, for 15 years at least, and my pins go in it and come out of it, and I've never thought about whether or not they've gotten dull or not, Vicki. I can tell you that they don't live very long in the styrofoam because I always have a quilt ready to quilt. So if I, trying to talk and thread a machine at the same time, that's kind of like magic. So I'm always in the process of quilting a quilt. So once I get this one quilted, I'll grab another quilt top and it'll be ready to be quilted. So I'll be basting it, and I'll be basting it with my pins. So honestly, my pins don't spend a lot of time in that styrofoam box. They spend a lot of time in a quilt waiting to be quilted for me to have the time to actually quilt it. So thank you very much for your question, Vicki. All right, so my machine is just about threaded. Okay, all right, so the next, oops, I kind of looped that in there. All right, so my next quilting design is the border, and it is going to be a loopy kind of a design. Whoops, go to a new page. If you don't have a sketchbook in your studio, I recommend you get a sketchbook in your studio so that you can be practicing these things. And the idea here, this is going to be a corner, because this is going to be the border. And I want you to think about the fact that the border does not have a binding on it yet, right? So if this book is the edge of my actual quilt top, you need to imagine a 1/2 inch line away from the edge. Because when you're done quilting and you put the binding on, your binding will take up that 1/4 inch on the edge, and you don't want your design to go all the way, like here on the quilt, you don't want it to go all the way into this edge here, because the border binding will be taking that up. So always imagine a 1/2 inch from the edge. And then for this design, you're going to also imagine a diagonal line, and I'm going to draw this on the quilt, but I'm going to show you why. So here's the idea. You're going to be loop-de-looing back and forth. As you come to the corner of the quilt, you want to plan it so that you've got one loop-de-loo right here at the corner, and then come up just like normal. And now you're going to make the corner. So that means one big loop-de-loo and come back down. Now, this one big loop-de-loo is so much bigger than the quilting spaces created with the other designs that you have to do additional quilting in that loop-de-loo, which means just put a teardrop right inside that loop-de-loo. Then you're ready to go back on to the quilt, making a loop-de-loo, then a bottom one, and continue. So that's what my loop-de-loo border corner looks like. So it comes loop-de-loo, one loop, then a big loop-de-loo with a teardrop in the middle, and then another loop-de-loo to get me back into the quilting process, all right? So we're gonna do that now, and before we do that, I do wanna mark on the quilt like I was talking about. So with this, you can, if you choose, actually mark that 1/2 inch. Oh my goodness. Is that a white, I don't know that. Can you see that? Okay, we can. I think it's a green pencil lead. That's why I'm going, wait a minute. So I don't know, can you see that? Okay, so here is a mark that's a 1/2 inch away. You could do that around the entire quilt if you were having troubles staying away from the edge. I usually just eye it. Let me take that pin out. Put it in its little case. All right, but I definitely want to draw a diagonal line here, and that's going to help gauge my big loop-de-loo and my teardrop when I get to it. All right, so you can see that really well. So keeping like a little small ruler, I don't know, you can't even see it, it's so clear. A little small ruler and a pencil handy next to your machine is always going to be good so that you don't have to run all over the place trying to find it. All right, so my stitching stopped here. This is where I'm going to start my stitching then. Oh, we found my scissors. Did we find my scissors? Oh, Athena found my scissors. Good job. All right. We're going to start here, my needle in the down position. My start is to take teeny tiny stitches. So that's going to be my lock. I also want you to note that when I basted this, I only have, what, a 1/2 inch of leftover backing, and the batting went exactly to the border. That is bad basting. Basting should be so that you have 2 to 3 inches of backing and batting here. So when I'm stitching this, because I don't have additional batting here, I'm going to be like holding it like with my 2 hands here. This is not very easy to do, but I'm a professional. I think I can handle it. All right, so I'm going to do loop-de-loo. Going to get that thread out of the way. Let me cut that off. I do love these scissors. They're kind of these tipped ones for embroiderers. Are great for cutting threads off of quilts when you're quilting them. Okay, now I'm going to cross over. As I'm nearing the edge of the corner, I'm going to be just considering, all right, I think I'll be able to get 2 more loop-de-loos before I get to that corner. So I'm just kind of thinking and planning ahead. Staying a 1/2 inch away from the border, the border's edge, so that I'll be able to put my binding on and not cut anything off. All right, so here is my last loop-de-doo. I'm gonna come up as if I was just gonna continue those loop-de-doos. There's my last one. Now I'm gonna do my big loop-de-doo. Bring him all the way up to that edge. Stop when I get to my pencil line. Do a teardrop inside that loop-de-loo. And now I'm ready to continue my loop-de-loos. Going back up and back down. And for me, this is a very comfortable design. I could do this all day long. It's also very fast. When I do stop, I do try to stop where the lines are going to crisscross. So there you go. That's the end of our little video, honestly. That was pretty quick. Did I keep it under 20 minutes?
24.
Okay, 24. I don't have any sense of time whatsoever. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that you're able to get back to doing some quilting, maybe finishing some UFOs. I've seen a lot of people posting, oh, I'm working on these UFOs. This is a good use of our time. It certainly wasn't a planned use of our time, but use the time that you have really wisely. Get some things done, all right? If you have any questions, my email is quiltingwithnancy@gmail.com. Super easy to remember. You can send me any questions. You can put any comments down underneath this video, and I'll try to get to answering those as quickly as possible, but honestly, email is a little bit faster. And if you like the video, please give us a thumbs up. We really like thumbs up, and if you don't like the video, Athena's cringing because I'm going to say, instead of giving us a thumbs down, why don't you just stop watching it? So if you don't like it, nobody's making you watch it, okay? She hates it when I say that. I hope that you all have a really great day, and I'll see you next week.